This recording is for the Dixon Public Library's Oral History Project. Today I'm talking with Tige Thomsen. My name is Paul Ferrell, and we're at Mr. Thomsen's home here in Dixon. Today is July 3rd, 1998. Of course, we're going to talk about Dixon, early days of Dixon before 1940. But before we do that, good Thomsen family history would be good. How far back do you know? Do you know about your great-grandparents?
I do have started out looking up my the Thomsen side of the family. Mm-hmm. But I never got around to it. I even went to the school class they had on genealogy. Oh. But I never got finished up on it. I got into too many things at one time.
Oh, you should get
but
into
I'm still,
people...
I got to get a new computer first, something that I can get enough on. My old Tandy 1000 won't do it.
You know, Margaret Rohr, she could give you advice on genealogy. She's quite a hobby with her. Well, what do you know about your grandparents?
I do know that I did have a great-grandfather that was a sea captain over in Denmark. And he had made, I don't know how many trips he made over here, but he made several trips over here on board ship. And I think he lived in San Francisco for a year or something like that, and he had a brother that had a restaurant in San Francisco, but I don't know too much about that. And my granddad came originally from Lincoln, Placer County, up north here. In 1913 he moved down. My dad moved down here in 1912. They were farming out here southeast of Dixon on the old Dr. Bell Ranch. And my granddad farmed that for quite a while. My dad was in with him until he got married. Well, he and my mother got married in 1913, December the 14th, 1913. And so they moved to a house in the district down there where I was born. And I think the year they got married was a year somewhat like this was. In 1930, well, it would be 1914 because they were married in December.
What do you mean like this year?
Huh? Wet. Because they said there were 3 feet of water off down here at Liberty Island, or Liberty Farm, on the east side of the tracks there. That there was about 3 feet of water, and there was for a while they couldn't even get out of the place they were living on.
They're on an island.
It's on an island out there. But anyway, I was born in 1915, on May the 6th, 1915. And they were living on Midway Road at that time, where I was born. It was about 5 miles out on Midway Road, and then back up in the field about, half a mile.
So it was a farm?
It was a ranch back in there, yeah, a little 2-story house. And from what I can gather, what I can remember was said about it, after years afterwards, I've heard my folks talk about it, that the house was full of skunks when I was born. And so I got ribbed about that's where my smell came from.
You're born with it.
I was born with it. But we lived there then for several years, and then we moved on into town, nearer town further, on the old Dalton Ranch.
Well, how many years were you out there?
I think probably about a year. I think I was about a year, between 6 months and a year.
So then you became a city kid then?
And I was out in the country yet, but it was closer to town.
Oh, okay.
It was only out here to Midway Road, turned left, and then 1.5 miles and right up a lane there. So I just come in gradually. So we lived there then for quite a few years. And let's see, I think that was about 1915. I was about 8 years old, I think, when we moved, 7 or 8 years old. When we moved in, we moved back out toward the country a little bit further, about a half a mile on the left-hand side of the road.
Now, why was your family doing so much moving?
Well, they were renting houses. Then my dad, or my granddad, bought that ranch out there. So then we moved on to it. And we lived on that then until I believe it was about 27 or 28. Then we moved over, went back on down to where I was born, just almost to where I was born, and went up Sykes Road to where the Rose family lived. And we built a house there. So they got that done about the time I got into high school. While we finished the house. And then I drove my brothers and them into school from there. And you wanted to know something else about how we lived in that too, during World War I?
Yeah, well, of course you were born in 1915.
I was born in 1915.
What's your earliest memories? And I guess you must have known some World War I veterans?
Yeah, I had an uncle.
An uncle?
And I got a story to go along with that
okay.
a little bit later on there. And, but anyway, I can remember the war and everything, but as far as suffering from it, we raised everything of our own. Our own sheep for butchering, our own calves, and chickens and for eggs and that, and then we milked a few cows, and we sold that cream, separated it, and then sold the cream. And that was the money we lived on. And but we never did go hungry or anything. We ate pretty good. And we did go to town once a week, unless we had to have something emergency. And then, let's see, after we lived, what
about this once a week to town trip? That was
just for groceries, for stuff that we had to have, and pick up mail and stuff like that. In those days, they didn't have any mail delivery, so we had to come into the post office to pick up the mail.
So a trip to town was...
usually on a Saturday.
Was it kind of a fun experience?
It was a fun experience, yeah. Once in a great while, we'd get a chance to spend 10 cents and go to a show. At that time, we had a theater here in Dixon, at the same place where the old theater building is now. And we'd get to see Shoot 'em Up, Tom Mix, or something like that. And then we'd go back home again, and then Sunday, we usually had to go to church every Sunday. That was one thing, a Lutheran church. My family on my mother's side were Lutheran. My granddad and grandmother on the other side, they hardly do any church going at all. My granddad was a good Mason, and my grandmother was in the Eastern Star, pretty active in that. And I think that then my uncle was called into the service, going on ahead with that, called into the service, and he was over in France, shipped over to France after he got through his boot camp and that. He was shipped into France. So he wrote my grandmother a letter, and that letter, she never did get it. She found out after he come home. He asked her, said, "You didn't get that letter of mine?" She said, "No, I didn't get it." So then it was forgotten about, and then life went on as it went on. And when they tore the old post office, when they built the new post office there and they were moving, they pulled the old boxes out, the little boxes that were in the old post office. Here that letter was. It had worked down through a crack and went down and was laying on the floor. So my grandmother got it pretty near 50 years late.
50 years? Well, sometimes the post office is pretty slow service.
Yeah. So that's how I got acquainted with about a sixth cousin of mine from Denmark. He was working for Maersk ship lines.
Right.
He was a first engineer on it. So he got into Long Beach, and he got a letter from somebody. He wrote to his dad and told his dad to send him that letter that they had gotten from my uncle. So his dad did, and he gave it to him. So he got out. He was here for about, pretty near a month, I think, and before they sailed out again. And he says, wrote to different people around, asked about different people around this area up here. So he started out at Suisun. He heard of some Thomsens at Suisun, but they didn't spell the name right. So he went on, trying people. So finally, I had gone down to Mexico with my brother-in-law, Greta's brother, for Laetrile treatments. And that was the only place you could get them, so they went down there to that Mexican hospital down there. So I went down there and spent 2 weeks down there with him, which was quite a trip. But anyway, the day I came back on a Saturday night, and Sunday morning, I just got up and got showered and cleaned up and everything, and I don't forget where it was. Greta and her brother went someplace, and the phone rang. So I went out and answered it. The fellow says, is this a Thomsen residence? And I said, yeah. Well, he says, how do you spell your name? I says, Thomsen. Well, that's what I'm looking for. So he says, are you at home, or will you be home in 10 minutes or 5 minutes? I'm downtown here in Dixon, and I'll come down and see you. So he came down there, and that's how we got acquainted with him. Now we've lost track of him. He got married, and that was the last we heard of him. So I don't know where he is now. I'm still trying to find him. And there was quite a write-up in the paper about that letter, though.
Oh yeah, I'll bet.
But as far as World War I, why, it didn't, wasn't too much of a hardship on us, outside of the family going into the service.
Well, what about at the end of the war, the Spanish influenza? Did you ever hear anything about that? You were, I guess you might have been 3 or 4.
I'm about 3 or 4 years old. I don't remember hearing too much about that. Mm-hmm. I remember that they had some kind of an influenza, but I don't know too much about it. I heard them talk about it, but didn't pay too much attention to it.
Mm-hmm. Well, something you might have grown up with. I don't know if it affected you much. 1920, I think it was 1920. Yeah. Prohibition came in. It lasted
Prohibition
until
came in, yeah.
33, I think.
Yeah, it lasted until 33, 34, somewhere along in there.
Did that have an effect on the town or your family?
Not too much on my family, because my family weren't too much drinkers.
Uh-huh.
We always had liquor at home, though. Our beer, we made our own beer in the basement.
Oh, you did?
Uh-huh.
Now, was that legal?
It wasn't legal, but everybody knew how to make it. So we just made enough for ourselves and wasn't selling it or anything.
Uh-huh.
It was just for our own use.
Now, that was pretty common with people around town?
I think pretty much so, yeah. But there was a lot of them that were bootlegging, too.
Oh, there was?
Uh-huh. I helped to move a couple of stills when I was in grammar school and high school, out here at Tremont.
You helped move it?
I helped move the still. The barn caught a fire.
Oh.
And they had the still in there yet, so we finally got the fire down enough where we could get all the stuff out. We hauled all that stuff down into a corner of a field in a ditch down there and left it down in there. So they never did catch the guy. They knew he was bootlegging.
Did the still start the fire in the barn?
The still started the fire in the barn, yeah. The fellow that was working for this guy was supposed to have watched it, and I think he went to sleep or something and didn't turn the fire off at the right time. And that was quite a joke with the chief of police here in town. And everybody got in and took and moved that still out, and the chief of police didn't even see it, didn't even know. He knew it was there, but he couldn't figure out where it went to.
what about the schools here? You of course went to school in Dixon.
I went to the Tremont School. I started out there in the first grade, and there was one teacher in the school, and I can't remember, it seems to me there was 30 some odd kids in the school for that one teacher. But then as we progressed on, that teacher would teach each one of us as we went along on the grade we were in. And then after we got up old enough, we would teach some of the kids in the lower grades. She would put us in charge of the ones in the lower grades there. So it took a lot of the work off of her, but oh boy, she was a strict teacher. And I had her until I was in the 5th grade, I think it was. When I went into 5th grade, then she decided to move into the school in town. So then we had just teachers that they could pick up that would teach in a country school. And we had some really do these. They had no control over the kids whatsoever. And the kids, I never will forget, Arnold Collier, his brother and I got kicked out of school one day because I don't remember what we said something. And the teacher told us to go on out to the horse barn and stay out there. So we went out there. Well, they were catching skunks and killing them. We were catching the skunks for them, and then we'd bring them to school, and then they'd take them home and skin them the next night. So somebody had brought in 2 skunks. So Robert and I, we went out and got those 2 skunks. And it was in the spring of the year, and no screens on the windows yet or anything. And it was warm, and they had the windows all open. So we said, we got together and decided that we were going to get into some mischief, so we went out and each got a skunk. Held him by the leg. We sneaked up and got underneath these windows, and he got on the one end of the building and I got on the other, and I threw one in and it landed right on the teacher's desk. And I thought, sure as a dickens, that would be the end of my schooling. If it hadn't have been that my dad was on the board and a friend of his was on the board, I don't think I'd have ever finished grammar school.
Now, how do you catch a skunk?
In traps. One of those big old traps, catch them by the legs, spring trap. And then they would skin them and sell these skins to some outfit back east, dry them and then send them back to them. But the kids in those days got into a little mischief too.
That sounds like quite a bit of mischief, throwing skunks around. Now that was a country school.
Yeah.
So you had school in town, then you had country school.
Yeah.
I guess the kids must have came from all the farms and ranches all around. I suppose some had to travel quite a ways?
There's some of them. We had about 3 miles from where we lived over to the country school. And we either walked, rode horseback, or the folks took us. Or one of the neighbors would. We took turnabout to the neighbors that lived out there would take the kids one week and then another one another week. And if it was good weather, well, then we would walk over. It was about 2 miles to school.
So what were the roads like out there? I guess it got pretty bad in the winter.
Yeah. You know, part of the time in the winter, you couldn't go on the roads at all with a car. If you did, you had to come clear into town where the paved road was, and come clear in, hit A Street here, then go back out 2 miles. And when whoever took you down had to go home again, well, then they'd have to go clear around again.
So, what was back when you remember the earliest times, I guess people were out there with horses. A lot of the farmers, the farm equipment was horses?
Most of the work was done by horses when I was in lower part of grammar school. Because we did all of our, well, they did have a tractor for pulling the harvester, for thrashing the wheat, barley. But we used horses to go around the field and pick up the sacks as we dumped them. They didn't use bulk then. we put them in sacks, and they had two sack sewers on the harvester, and they'd sew them up, and drop them on this board. And when they got, I think it was either 3 or 5 sacks on there, then they'd hit a button or a trip, and it would trip it, and it'd drop those sacks, in a bunch. Then when they had another 1 or 2 guys going through with a wagon and a team and picking those sacks up and hauling them, either piling them at home or taking them to the warehouse.
Now you're living out in the countryside. I guess you did some work on farms then.
Oh yeah.
What sort of things did you do? Did you sew sacks yourself? Or?
I did some of that on the cleaner, on a grain cleaner. That after we harvested it, sometimes the seeds were dirty, and we'd have to take and clean it, run it through another separator that would take all those seeds in the chaff and that and blow it out. Then you'd have clean seed then. I sewed sacks on that.
Was that barley or what?
Barley, yeah. Mostly barley then. We did raise some wheat, but most of it was barley in those days.
Did you ever do any work with sheep?
Yeah. We were running about, my granddad and dad both run about 3,000 head of sheep, I guess, altogether. And we'd feed them on the road. That was our job, a lot of it. Like my dad, when he had his herd at the house, in the spring of the year, why we'd take them out on the road, and then us kids would have to herd them on the road. Try to keep them, so people could go through. They were getting cars in those days then.
Did you have any dogs to help you?
Yeah. Oh yeah, we always had a good sheepdog.
Now the sheep are raised for the wool.
Yeah, and we had to shear them.
You did that?
I didn't do any of that. My uncles did that.
That takes an expert, doesn't it?
That takes an expert to do that. And my mother's brothers were sheep shearers, so they did our shearing for us for several years. And then there was another two brothers move up here from down the coast. And they'd come up every spring of the year and every fall for shearing. And then we had them do it. Because my uncles, they got a little older and they couldn't stoop over anymore and shear them. Yeah. That's quite a job. I tried shearing one time, but I wouldn't want it as a job, full-time job.
Yeah, I've seen professionals at work. Boy, it's pretty impressive.
But some of these guys, they just love that kind of work.
Yeah. There's fairly good money, too.
Yeah.
Well, of course, gradually things out in the farm went from horsepower to machines. What about electricity? Were a lot of farms out there without electricity?
We didn't have any. Yeah, we didn't have electricity until about 26 or 27, somewhere along in there. And then we got electricity in. And we had to wire all the barns and the houses and everything. But, that was really good, having electricity. Then we got, radio came in even before electricity did. We had batteries, an old battery Crosley radio. It was the first thing we had. And that's when I got interested in radio. And so we'd have to take the battery to town. We tried to make a battery last a week. We had 2 or 3 batteries, and we'd keep rotating them, taking them into town until we got electricity. We got electricity then we could hook a battery charger right onto the battery, and it would keep the battery charged when we had the radio going.
So did you listen to radio every night?
Yeah, usually every night, news or something like that, certain programs. But we didn't use it too much because you'd run the battery down, then you'd be without a radio.
Well, I guess radio is kind of a form of recreation.
It is,
Relaxation.
Yeah, relaxation.
Now, when you come into town, you mentioned before there was the theater.
Yeah.
Was there other kinds of recreation that kids could do when they ever had the time?
No, that was about the only thing there was in town that I can remember of.
Uh-huh.
Of course, we never come to town unless we went to a theater. And, we come in and visit our relatives in town, and where the kids would all get together and play. But as far as any other recreation, there wasn't too much. Oh, there was ball games, but that was all for grown-ups.
Oh.
Baseball.
Uh-huh.
Baseball and auto racing.
And auto racing?
We had a couple of guys in here with Model Ts that made racers out of them.
Vernon Dutra, now he was a hot
Vernon
rodder.
Dutra was a hot rodder.
Yeah. But did you have a real racetrack here?
Out at the fairgrounds, the old horse track.
Oh, I didn't hear about
See,
that.
there used to be a horse race. There used to be horse racing here too every May Day.
Mm-hmm.
Every fair day.
Yeah, we should talk about the May Fair, but what about the auto racing? I hadn't heard anything about that. I heard about the horse racing.
Well, that
was it really organized, or was it just?
No, it was just kids that get together from local towns. It started out.
Ah.
Vacaville had a couple of them, and I think we had one or two guys here in town were working on them, and they'd have competitive races here on the track. And I think they had one over at Vacaville too, if I remember right. And Davis, I don't remember whether they ever had a track over there or not. I wasn't too interested in them then. And about the only other thing that we ever did is go fishing. Go down the slough down here below Liberty Island and go fishing down there for catfish. That used to be quite an summer evening sport, and sometimes Sunday weekend.
Now, what about the May Fair? That's the big event of the year here in Dixon, isn't it?
Yeah.
And now that was, what was that like?
It was more or less of a family get-together. What I mean by that is all the families would bring lunches in. They had carnivals and one thing and another set up too, but the main thing was they'd have a parade in the morning, and then everybody would take their lunch and go out. There was no buildings, very few buildings outside of the grandstand on the fairgrounds out here. All the rest of it was in lawn, up where the buildings are now. And everybody had spread their blanket or tablecloth out on the lawn there, and all the families would all get together there and have their lunch out there. And after that was over, they'd have horseshoe games and stuff like that, the older people would. And the kids, they'd have three-legged races and stuff. And then they got in, they had horse races out there on the track. Then years after that, well, then they got motorcycles. And they'd have motorcycle races there. But there was always enough stuff to keep you out of mischief.
Now there was a parade that went along with it.
Parade
right?
in the morning, yeah. Yeah, parade started at 10 o'clock. They'd have floats and bands and stuff like that. And there'd be a few of them have their horses in the parade and their wagons. And then the old horse-drawn fire truck fire wagon they had. It didn't amount to too much, the Dixon one. I can't remember too much what it was like. It wasn't a great big one, just a small one. And they used to advertise that a lot on the parades, just like they do now. But I think there was a lot more stuff for the younger fellas, you know, or I say middle fellas, school kids, to go and have a lot of fun with. Then they'd have a ball game.
Oh, hold on a minute. Let's stop for a minute and let me turn this over. Okay, I've got the tape recorder going on the other side now. Now we were talking about the Mayfair, and you're mentioning for high school kids, you said the ball game.
We had the schools, high schools especially, would come over from different towns and have competitive baseball games. And then finally the younger people in town that had, that played baseball, like the Royers and those guys, they'd get together and get a game going with Vacaville, which is usually always a fight, but the one that they got together. And we had that. But there was always something going on. And I think the kids got into a lot less trouble then than what they get into now.
Yeah, just yesterday I was talking to Otto Royer. He was quite a baseball player.
Yeah, he and his two brothers.
His two brothers too, yeah.
See, his
one
brother,
professional, by the way.
His one brother, another one that was a lawyer, Claude, he was my coach in high school, PE teacher in high school. So that's how I got acquainted with the family. Some of them claim that back in Germany that the Royer family, and there was a whole bunch of families that all came over about the same time, that they were all married in Europe, in their home country in Germany. And that there's a lot of them that there are relatives. The Schroeders and the Royers, and God, I don't know who all of them are.
Well, the Germans, they make up a good-sized ethnic group, and of course I heard of the Portuguese, that's another group.
That's right. That's what I went to school with, was mostly Portuguese.
Mostly Portuguese? Were there other groups in town? That's all I ever hear about is Portuguese and the Germans.
Portuguese and the Germans, and most of the Portuguese had dairies around here.
And the Germans were dry farmers.
And the Germans were dry farmers.
I guess they're kind of bringing the old country with them.
That's what a lot of it was. Well, my granddad was one of the first ones to raise sugar beets, irrigate, and raise sugar beets out here east of town. In the Reclamation District, 2068 out there.
Don't hear much about sugar beets nowadays around here.
Well, they raise an awful lot of them yet.
Oh, they do?
Yeah, they're hauling some of them. I see a load go through the other day. But there's not as many raising it since they come in with tomatoes.
Yeah, today tomatoes
Tomatoes,
the money
it's mostly tomatoes now.
Now, in the old days, it was barley and sheep.
Barley and sheep and wheat. Then you go further north, they had rice where they could irrigate it, flood it. They had rice up above Woodland there. And and I can't remember now just what all they did raise.
And what about orchards? Was there much of
Orchards, there was a lot of orchards. There was walnut orchards out here south of, or west of town. All that out in there. In fact, half of the town on that side was in orchard.
Now, there's another nut that grows on trees.
Walnuts.
And what's the other one?
Almonds.
There it is.
Almonds, yeah.
I was wondering how you're going to pronounce that, actually. You know, I noticed it's kind of a regional thing of how you pronounce. Some people say almonds.
Some say almonds, almonds.
Almonds.
Almonds, almonds.
So what's the correct Dixon pronunciation?
I don't know. I've just called them always almonds.
Almonds. Yeah.
Because that's the way the thing sounds when you spell it out.
Well,
Almonds.
Yeah. But that was pretty big too. Then walnuts, almonds.
Almonds was a big crop here in town, right near town here. Malcolm Tim had an almond orchard out there.
Yeah, he told me all about that.
I used to go out there and hunt the dove all the time. When I got into high school, we'd take off at noon and go out west of town out there in all those orchards out there and shoot our doves, kill doves and pigeons and that.
What about fruits? Are there not much fruit growing?
Just in little orchards, family orchards around. There was a lot of them. But you didn't hit the fruit too much until you got either over around Vacaville or over toward Winters. You get over the other side of Winters, west of Winters, is where the fruits come in.
Mm-hmm.
And peaches come in, you get up around Yuba City and up in there. That's where your good peaches came in.
You know, you mentioned in other places, before we were talking about sports, and I was wondering about rivalry between, I don't know, Dixon and Winters. You mentioned Vacaville. Was that is that important to the town, or was there kind of a hometown pride that Dixon is better than Winters? And
yeah, there was usually a few fisticuffs thrown around.
Oh, really?
At darn near every ball game, especially with between Vacaville and Dixon.
Now, not on the field, you mean?
On the field, or
on the field,
yeah.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
So did Otto
They
ever
get
go
into
out there?
I don't know about Otto, but I know some of the high school kids that were playing on the teams. They were the worst ones than the high school teams, football and one thing and another.
Mm-hmm.
There was always a fight in the football games in Vacaville, and all Winters had a couple guys over there like to pick a fight. I was never much of a sports fiend because I had to leave school. I had two brothers and a sister that I had to pick them up from school, and then go out and do the shopping that had to be done. If there was any shopping had to be done, I had to take them around to do that, and then I had to be home by 5 o'clock to start doing the chores at home. Because then I'd get through doing the chores at home, and I'd get through about 6 o'clock. I'd run in and grab a bite to eat, and then go out and take Dad's place on the tractor, and then drive the tractor until maybe 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning.
2 or 3 o'clock in the morning?
We worked night and day, getting our crops and that in, because there was just the two of us. Otherwise, he'd had to hire another man, and had to cut down on the profit.
Well, you know, I really don't know anything about farming, but maybe you could tell me, is there a time when there's not much work to do?
Oh yeah, there's a time.
Certain times
during
of year?
wet weather.
Wet weather?
Wet weather, you get a lot. And if in between seasons, that is your wheat and that, your wheat you start harvesting, the barley, you start harvesting the barley in June. Anywhere from the 1st of June to the middle of June. And then your wheat comes on maybe a week or two later. Well, then it gets ripe enough to harvest. And that runs in until, well, usually after the 4th of July. Just after the 4th of a week or so after the 4th of July, depending on the weather.
Now, when you got this little bit of time off, did families ever go off on vacations?
Oh yeah, we used to go off on vacation over to Dillon's Beach, and stay over there maybe for 3 weeks or a month, and then come back, and then it'd be time to go to work on the putting in the fall crops again.
So farmers do get a break once in a while.
They do get a break once in a while.
Except the dairy farmers.
The dairy farmer, he's the guy that stuck. That's one reason I never went into a dairy business.
Yeah, I always hear about that. But before dawn to milk them, and then you got to milk them again.
That's right.
Before it gets dark. Well, we've been talking a lot about farming and out in the country. We should talk a little bit about town. Well, you mentioned the theater and the post office. What about businesses? A couple of people mentioned a dry goods store. I can't remember the name of it. What is it?
La Fontaine's.
No, it's kind of a German.
Beckley?
Beckley, maybe.
Beckley, yeah, there was La Fontaine's. He handled a lot of women's clothes and that, and dry goods. And Beckley's was mostly men's clothes. He went in mostly for men's suits and stuff like that. But La Fontaine was more or less women's clothes, dresses and fancy clothes like that. And let's see, there's
There was
a couple jewelry shops here in town.
Oh, I never heard about jewelry shops.
Yes, Thornton's, where Thornton's was, on Main Street there. It's closed up now, and he's moved out to where the old bank was out on Pitt School Road. And then there was another one right across from the service station where I was. An old guy run that, and I knew him very well. His daughter went to school with us, to high school. And let's see.
What about hotels? Must have been some hotels.
Yeah, there was a hotel where two hotels where the service station was. One, they burnt down in the late 20s. Both of them burnt down. Then there's a hotel on the other side, right across the street, right north of the service station. On A Street there, A and First and A, on the other corner. And then there was a bar down below that, after Prohibition went out, and the Dawsons owned a bar there, Dawson Brothers. And that's the one now that's across the street where that Dawson's restaurant is there, bar and restaurant. And there was a grocery store where Bud's is. There was a grocery store there. And that guy used to teach music. I took music from him for about 7 or 8 years. Trumpet or cornet lessons. And then there was a bakery there. Zanette Seifert lives right down across the street over here. Her mother and dad, Eddie Seifert's dad and mother run that bakery. And
now I was just talking with Gordon Marvin. His father had a garage.
had a garage where the post office is. And then there was a Chevrolet garage. Dan Wagley owned that. That's where I first started working on automobiles.
Yeah, he told me there were 5 garages in town.
Yeah. And then Do Yours, right across the street from the Ford garage, or right across from where the, let's see what's there now. Oh, right where that barber shop is on West A Street. Across on the other side, there was a Dodge garage there, and a mechanic. Caterpillar had a shop over there and a sales room. That's where I went to work after I got out of the station the first time. And I went in business on the first day of January in 1935 when I went into the service station on where the green fence is around there.
Yeah, I used to work in a service station. My boss always told me you call it a service station, not a gas station.
Yeah.
Because you're supposed to give service.
You're supposed to give service. And that's the reason I went out, because they wouldn't let me give service.
Is that right?
They wanted to sell it would serve yourself. And I says, I can't do it. I says, all the people that I've got here are older people. I've serviced them for the last 30 years. And I said, I'm not going to turn them down now. So the guy said, well, we just can't rent it. Can't give you another lease.
I think I worked in the last service station.
Yeah.
Yeah, we actually checked the oil and washed the windows.
Yeah.
Now you said that was 1935 and you had a service station.
That was a year. I graduated from high school. Actually, got my diploma in '34 because I had to go back and make up a quarter of a credit because I had gone to the doctor and had an ear operated on just a couple days before I graduated. And the teacher wouldn't give me another test. She gave the test the day I was gone. And she wouldn't let me take the test a day later. I had to come back and make up a quarter of a credit. So I came back in the following year, '34, and took a half hour of typing and a half hour of bookkeeping every Friday. So that gave me a full hour. And that's how I got my bookkeeping training and all that kept me in business.
That bookkeeping helped when you had
Oh yeah, I couldn't have done any better. Well, I knew I wasn't going to go to college. So I took everything that, auto mechanics, I took welding, took woodworking. I could do anything. You might call it a jack of all trades and master of none.
Mm-hmm. Now your service station, then you must have been doing some repairs.
I did repairs all the time I was in there.
Uh-huh.
But I started doing that on the ranch because I'd help my dad with tractors and cars and that.
Mm-hmm. Now, being an owner of a service station, you're right there on Main Street, and I guess being there, you get to know what's really going on. People tell you.
That's right.
I guess a little gossip and.
You get gossip and all kinds of news. I had a picture of the station here someplace. I just started going through. Here's some of my relatives, and here's.
Oh, hey,
this
you better
is a
sit
different.
down. We got a camera going here.
That's right too. I was looking for the paper that I had.
Now this is
of
your
the service station, yeah.
family.
This is family
photo
here,
album?
most of it, yeah. These are all family pictures. But I thought I had a picture of the service station. But I don't have it. I'll have that though for the next one.
Okay.
And but they, I closed up then, and they had the station torn out of there in less than a week.
Hmm.
So when I came back, we took off and went back to Colorado. At that time, we had property back there too. We bought some mobile home lots back there,
Mm-hmm.
and so we'd go back there every year and have to clean up around them and do work on that, take care of everything back there. So it kept me busy.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I did then for, well, outside of then I came back from Colorado. Then one of my competitors needed some help. He couldn't get nobody, so I went over and went to work for him. I worked for him for 6 months, and then I went to work. He sold out to another one. So then that guy talked me into staying with him until he got somebody to take my place. Well, then in the meantime, he didn't get anybody. So then Rossi's, where I used to work in the garage there, Rossi Brothers Garage, Oldsmobile and GMC. I was service manager there for about 6 years before I went in the service station lifetime. But then he came down there one day and wanted to know if I'd come back and help them out. So I quit the service station then and went down there and went to work as service manager down at the garage again. I worked there again for a year and a half until they closed it up. And then they moved it on out with the tractor and everything, so they had their own crew out there to work on.
Well, being a business owner in Dixon, I've talked to people about, I guess, what you call the leading citizens, and they tend to be the people who would have a business, or be a doctor, or is that the way it worked?
Well,
who were leading citizens of Dixon,
well,
say
the
in the
ones,
1930s?
Let's see, I can't remember who got the awards for it, but the leading, there was Floyd Smith that had the Shell plant out here. He did quite a bit for the city, and well, I was tied up in a lot of things myself when I was in the service station there. That's when I went into the Lions Club, and I'm still in it. I've got 44 years of perfect attendance in it, going on 45. I'm now a life member of Lions International. So, well, there's Joe Williams and his wife were leading citizens around town here. They've won awards and one thing or another, and they do a big business here. The flower shop, they're on West A Street or East A Street. And
now the Royers.
Royer
was the mayor, is that right?
Yeah. Let's see, which one was Hans Royer was mayor for quite a few years there. That's Otto's brother, younger. I think a younger brother.
Yeah, I think Otto told me that the other day.
Yeah. And let's see. Well, then the bank, First Northern Bank, Bank of America, and Bank of America, that used to be the Bank of Italy. When the Bank of Dixon went out of business, why, the Bank of Italy bought them out. And then after a while, several years later, Bank of America came along and took over Bank of Italy. Well, I've been in doing business with them for years when I had the station. And I also did business with the First Northern over there. But the First Northern, I think I had put my first dollar in there, first dollar I saved, put in a savings account over there, and I'm still doing business with both of them. But the banking business is, I don't know, you're not, they don't think you as a real customer anymore.
I know that.
They're charging you for everything they do.
Yeah. Well, speaking of money and lack of money, there was the Depression. Of course, you grew up during a Depression. It lasted a long time. What effect did it have on Dixon?
I started in business in Depression in 1935.
Yeah,
that was right at the beginning of it. And I made out all right. I had to do a lot of hard work myself.
Oh, long hours?
Long hours. I did most of it myself, and then I'd hire kids to come in on Saturday or on Sunday to work for me. So that was then I'd do my bookkeeping and whatever I had to do then.
They weren't doing any bartering, were you?
Oh, I did. I have done some, yeah.
Have you?
I did some bartering on it. Somebody that I knew that couldn't pay me, why, in money, and I could use their work, why, I put them on. I hired a kid when I went in there the next time in 53 when I went in. I hired a kid that was working over at the Western Auto. Well, it's Dennis Tama now. He works at the lumber yard. He's retired and then works there just part-time. And he worked for me for a good many years. And I kept quite a few of the kids in town here in money. Anytime I needed any help, why, there's always somebody that I could get. A lot of them couldn't work steady, but I may work 2 or 3 in to fill out a week if I needed somebody to work nights, evenings, because we always closed up at about 10 o'clock every night. If there was any night work to do, I went down and did it after I got my dinner. And I'd work maybe till sometimes 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. Come back in again at 5.
Yeah, I've talked to people who lived on farms and ranches, and they all say, well, you know, we grew our own food. So
that's what we did. That's what we did out the ranch, too.
So you were growing your own food, and then you were bringing in a little bit of cash with your service station.
Yeah.
You know, you mentioned a hotel that burned down. Do you remember any, disasters, calamities like that, fires?
Well, there was back in the 80s, they had earthquakes and fires both in Dixon.
Well, we have to talk about the 30s, though.
Yeah, I know it.
Yeah.
But
Now that school, well, I'm not really changing the subject. Now the old school was torn down because it wasn't earthquake safe.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
They said that school wouldn't stand up there in another year, the old high school.
Mm-hmm.
And it was all marble, the most beautiful school you ever saw.
Mm.
And I'll probably have a picture of it if I can find it, and I've got pictures of it. And they couldn't knock it down. They had to darn near dynamite it in order to get it down. And the same way with the gymnasium that was there. They tore that down. It was a nice big gym too. But they said no, it had to be torn down because it was too dangerous. They didn't want the kids practicing in there and one thing and another. But I never could see where anything was coming apart on it. And it wasn't too many years old either.
And they really didn't have a quake until the 80s.
No.
Yeah. Now what about fire though? You said there were, did you ever see any big fires around?
Yeah, I saw both those hotels burn. One of them anyway.
Uh-huh.
Right down there, you know where the station was.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there was two hotels, one right on the corner, then another one right back of it. And the one that was the back one, I saw that burn down. And the one up here, I can't remember. I was pretty small when that one burned, because that's when they put the service station in there right afterwards. And these guys, and to tell what there was 3 stations put up there. And I saw the old cellars in that when they were digging out for the tanks and that.
Mm-hmm.
The bricks and everything were those cellars were still down in there.
Hmm.
And there's some of them still down in there. I haven't seen the guys since they got drilling in there the other day to see what they did run into. But I know I saw the back one burn because we parked right across the community church. Was right across the street from it, the old brick church that used to be there. Mm-hmm. And we pulled up in front of that, happened to be parked there in front of that. We had gone into the bakery to get some bread and that to go out, take home out to the ranch. Well, just as we got out there, the doggone fire siren went off and they started working on that, on the old hotel. And boy, it didn't take it too long to go either, and that was a hot fire.
Now, was that a volunteer fire department?
All volunteer fire department.
Mm-hmm. But I guess a big wooden
they only
two-story building?
Yeah, it was a big, let's see, I think it was 2-story, that one there.
Mm-hmm. Burned pretty fast, I guess.
Yeah. The wood was all dry. Mm-hmm. And then after that, one thing that did happen, up there where the lumber yard, and where you cross the track, and the lumber yard's got that the planing mill there. Mm-hmm. On the right-hand side. There was a bus, Greyhound bus, hit by a train there. Mm. Coming from San Francisco, going east, and it hit that bus. And I don't remember anymore how many people got killed, but there was bodies and that scattered all over the lumber yard there. I didn't see it happen, but I was in there right after it happened.
Oh, gee. That was in that was in the 30s.
That was in the 30s, yeah.
Huh. I never heard about that.
I think it was in the 30s. It would be the early 30s when it happened. Because before I took over the station there in 35.
Now the train. I think it was you who told me it doesn't even blow the whistle anymore.
Hardly blows a whistle. It does now.
Yeah.
You can hear them coming through every night now.
No, they had a station here in town, but no longer in use anyway.
A fire station?
I mean a train station.
Oh, a train station, yeah.
Yeah. I guess a train is pretty important to town.
Mm-hmm. I had a picture of that here too someplace. But I think they're using it on one of the letterheads. The Historical Society uses it on the letterhead.
Ah.
And
now, you ship your cream out on that back when you were on the...
Yeah.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I think Otto
Royer and them, yeah.
The cream went on the
Went
train.
on that. We had to take it in, I think it was every other day. And then they picked it up on the train. We were milking about, I don't know, 10, 11 cows out there at that time.
Hmm. Well, you know, something I've noticed talking to people is, whoops, hold on a minute, let me put in a new tape. Okay, I just put in a new tape in the tape recorder here. But I was about to ask you about organizations. You mentioned the Lions International, and I've heard several people mention the Masons. And there are other groups. Now these groups, they kind of, do they help to keep people together?
Oh yeah, I think they do.
Yeah.
I know I was one of the first ones to sign up in the Masonic, or in the Lions Club. I wanted to get into the Rotary Club. That started years before the Lions Club did. But I didn't have the right heading on my name to get into that. They were pretty strict on that then. They could only have one person of each class could belong to it.
I don't understand. One person of each.
Well, like say I was in a service station. And so somebody else in the service station,
oh, I see.
I couldn't go in until that other service station guy went out.
Oh, I didn't
But
know
now, they watched it pretty close then. And it was somewhat the same in Lions Club, but in Lions Club, the way we got by it, I was service station operator, because I owned the place. All right, I got 2 of my men on there, into Lions, and one of them was lubrication specialist, the other one was a tire specialist. And I could get them in that way. But Rotary, at the time that I asked about getting in, why they didn't do that. They couldn't do that. They were watching them that close. But I've been, in fact, I'm the only charter member left in the club. I've been in it going on 45 years. And I haven't missed a meeting. I make them up. I've missed them here. But I've made up more meetings in Colorado than I have in the local one here, or any of the local Lions clubs.
What about the Masons? I keep hearing the Masons.
Masons, that's a lodge. And that was built in 1876, I think it was, or something like that. It's on the lodge building down there. But we have no more lodge here. 4 years ago, we couldn't get enough to fill the chairs, you know, the officers. So we combined with the Davis Lodge. They were having the same trouble. So that way, then we took our name and our number, lodge number, 201. We took that and put it with Davis. Davis is Athens Lodge. Ours was Sylvieville Lodge. So now it is the Athens Sylvieville 201 Lodge, and we meet over in Davis. They got a nice new lodge building over there.
Yeah, Margaret Rohrer, maiden name Carpenter, she mentioned that, I guess some sort of women's auxiliary or
yeah,
something.
she was in, well, there's the Eastern Star, and then I think Margaret was in Rainbow Girls.
That's it,
Rainbow Girls, yeah.
And they would organize dances and things.
Yeah.
Yeah. Of course, dances were awfully important to her. She
yeah.
spent a lot of time talking about this. Now, that's another big social event for teenagers,
Dixon,
high school
yeah.
kids.
And Dixon always has had a lot of dances. Another thing, but it goes back before the 30s, the farmers in their slack time, every Saturday night they'd have a dance at a different farmhouse.
Oh,
A different farmer would put on a dance.
So it was a farmer dance.
It would, just a bunch of the people would get together, neighbors would get together and have a dance.
So
There was no charge for it or anything.
Now the farmer dance were maybe an older crowd?
It's an older crowd, yeah.
Uh-huh.
Hmm.
And
But the kids would go along too.
Yeah.
Hmm.
For some reason I imagine farmers doing square dancing. Or did
They
do
used
that?
to.
They used to
Yeah,
do
I
that.
can remember them doing square dancing.
Uh-huh.
Hmm. I never was much of a dancer.
Mm-hmm. Well, I talked a lot about dancing with Margaret, and then again with Vernon Dutra,
Yeah.
and of course Gordon Marvin, who was in a big band.
Yeah, he played there a lot of times.
Yeah, yeah, he
Mhm.
played. But was there I guess what I'm trying to get at, was there kind of a generation gap around that new music, which was the big
Yeah, I
band
think there
music?
was. I think there was.
Parents didn't like that music?
They didn't care too much for some of that new music.
Uh-huh. What about your own parents?
My parents, I didn't go to dances, so they didn't worry too much about it. But my sister and two brothers,
Mhm.
they were both all good dancers. But the folks would get kind of mad at them. There was a little bit too much alcohol, and that was about the time the Zoot Suits and that's were in.
Hmm.
It was when they were kids.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess every generation has something the parents don't like about it.
That's right.
Yeah. Well, let's see. Now you said something about an ear infection that made me wonder about doctors at Dixon.
Well, we had, I think at that time we had 4 or 5 doctors here in Dixon. And Dr. Parsons, Dr. Stolley, Dr. Flores, and then we had a chiropractor. Her name was, oh God, I can't think what it is. Van Pelt was her maiden name. And then Vernon Dutra was chiropractor.
Yeah.
And Vernon went with the football team
In Vacaville.
in Vacaville and all over the country. He went with them. And wherever the ball team was played, why Vernon went and took care of.
Yeah. Well, you said 4 or 5 doctors, and in the 30s we're talking about a town with a 2,000 population.
Yeah.
That seems like a lot of doctors. Or am I?
Yeah, we had plenty of doctors at
Plenty
that
of
time.
doctors.
Yeah. And then there was other doctors came in. There was Dr. Price. He was in, let's see. He was in, well, that would be in the 50s. Dr. Price, Dr. God, I can't think what their name was now. One of them is head service manager for the Dodge over in Vacaville. One of his son of the doctor is over there, and I'll be darned if I can think what his name is. But they've had other doctors come in and leave. Dr. Gulick. So we've had quite a few doctors in town here.
Well, I think I've pretty much gone down my list of things to talk about, but well, what did I forget? Something we should talk about Dixon in the 30s and 20s.
Only one thing that we miss in downtown Dixon now to what we had back in those days, and that is a good grocery store. The old people, all the old people live over on this side of the tracks. I think a lot of them did. And after Pardee Market closed there, they had no place to buy groceries. They had to go clear out to hometown out there to get groceries. And most of them, a lot of them didn't drive a car. So they had to get somebody to take them out. Now they've got the buses now that pick them up and take them out. But that's what I've been fighting for, is to have somebody put a store, even if a delicatessen, down there in that corner where the station was. And I think that would be to bring back a lot of downtown business, instead of getting it all out along the highway out there on Pitt School Road.
Yeah. Bring back downtown.
That's what I told them about when they closed me up there. I said, someday you're going to find out that I brought in quite a bit of business. I knew all the school teachers, because they were the first place, my place was the first place they came to, looking for a house, or to find out any information.
Well,
that's how come we got this house here. I knew the superintendent of schools when he came in. I was the first one he talked to.
Yeah, it's handy to have a gas station.
Then he built the house here, and got ready to leave. I asked him, I says, what are you going to do with that beautiful home you built? And he said, well, he says, I'm going to sell it to you. I bought it, but I didn't have any intentions of buying it at the time.
Well, now, I guess we're getting away from the subject of the past, but that's fine. That's okay. I wanted to ask you about, you were the president of the Dixon Historical Society. You're involved with, is that the proper name? Historical Society?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the name. You're involved with the Lions, and you're involved with the community. You're concerned about downtown, what you just saying. Now, why is it that you're concerned with Dixon history, and why are you the president? Why do you take time to do this?
Well, I guess on being the president, the fellow that died was about 2 years older than I was, so I come up next in line there. In fact, when they put me in, I didn't know I was nominated even for the job. We had gone to a meeting, and I was late getting there. So when I got ready to leave and come home, a couple of the guys come over and said, hey, Mr. President, when are we going to have our next meeting? I said, what do you mean by that? I said, well, we just put you in. So I'd like to, make a go of the thing and get a little publicity on the thing and get it rolling. And I'm trying now, what I want to do is, at our meetings as we come up, invite somebody from some other historical society, or some other club, like Vacaville or Fairfield, Woodland. Get somebody from one of those clubs in order to come over and then give us a talk on what they do. And I think that would help us a lot too. And I think in doing that, I think we're going to do a lot for getting stuff downtown again.
So you think using history is going to help the future?
I think it will. I think it will. If we can get the things to bring them down there.
So we can learn from the past.
That's right. I've learned a lot from it.
Well,
because I never did go to college.
Well, I'm going to be back on Monday, and we'll talk more about the history of Dixon. But for now, I want to say thanks for talking to us today on behalf of, on behalf of the Dixon Public Library. So, I'll turn off this camera.